Welcome to Breaking Through the Contradictions. The goal here is to review some of the common contradictions we have lived and have had various conversations about and how it impacts various areas of a child's growth. We invited different parents, business owners, and friends to have a candid conversation on how some of the contradictions we live contribute and or creates larger barriers to supporting our youth. The views and opinions expressed by the guests, speakers, and participants in this context are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the organizers, hosts, or any affiliated individuals or organizations. We encourage open dialogue and diverse perspectives, but the individual viewpoints shared during this discussion are personal and should not be attributed to any collective entity involved. Breathe. Oh my goodness. Okay. So you heard me say breathe. Breathe. Oh my gosh. It's been a day. Hello, my friends. Hi, Christine. How are you again?
Good. How are you, Tabitha? Nice to see you, Kevin.
Hey, great to meet you, Christine.
Nice
I
to
brought
meet
a
you.
friend. I brought a friend.
The other way.
Kevin, yeah, I know, right? We were trying to figure that out.
It's all opposite.
Yes. So I brought a friend, Christine. So Kevin's here to join us today. Man, this has been a little bit of a challenging day today. So excuse me early, it's in the event that things go a little awry. But I think it was important to have the conversation based off of part of the conversation that I had with Kevin yesterday. So, Christine, we're here again. And last week, man, I had what happened to me last week? I attempted to upload a video. I attempted to do it, but it did not work. It kicked me off, and I was like, okay, not for me today. No problem. I'll go about my business and come back next week.
I was wondering what happened. That's why I was calling you. I was like, Tabitha, are we on? Are we on? So I teach little children. Well, it's kind of important to have name tags. So I had to run out after school and go get name tags. And my name tags were all like stuck to their tables. And I'm like, oh, so do I wait or don't I wait? No, this is going to cause a major problem because then the children are going to go, I sit there. I'm like, nope, got to get those name tags. So how about you, Kevin? Has it been one of those weeks for you or?
I mean, today it's been nonstop calls all day, which is fun. But it also takes me away from the regular day-to-day work that needs to get done. So yeah, but good overall. Yeah.
So today, because we have a guest and we decided to invite someone else, and we're going to do this periodically. So if anybody is listening or want to come and hang out with us and challenge and conquer some of these contradictions, feel free. Just drop us a line, let us know. You can send it over to me. I'll catch it. We'll go ahead and schedule an opportunity for us to sit down and chat. But because we have a guest today, we are going to go ahead and do a round robin and kind of just give everybody a glimpse, a little 30-second understanding of who you are and what you do and why you've chosen to hang out here with us today. One of the things I do want to say is that because of the nature of the conversation today, we may go a little bit longer than 30 minutes, might be a little bit more like 45 or maybe up to the hour. So I just want to make sure that is understood early on, so that because we don't want to leave these type of conversations on, not tied down. We need to make sure that people are okay and safe. So I'll go ahead and let Christine start. Go ahead.
Okay. My name is Christine Jones. I've been teaching now 31 years. And I have I also work on the teacher leadership team, and I coach teachers. I'm working on a couple of books. I'm working on creating harmony in a classroom, and I just did a work called The Balancing Act with a collaborative with another author, and I'm working on a couple other initiatives as well, one with Kristen Norai, and it's a parent workbook so we can get the parent side of it, parents and teachers working together. So I'm looking forward to the next step and taking my knowledge and helping other people that are either newer to teaching or that have been teaching for a while with some teacher tips and tricks too.
Cool. Okay, so I'm 31 years. All right, madam. So you hung in there and you're doing a good job. So I just want to say thank you for everything that you do.
Thank
All right,
you.
Kevin, you're up.
I am up. So my name is Kevin Strauss. Really, I just want more joy and happiness in the world and less conflict and stress. That's really what I want. I'm the founder of Uchi, which is a social platform that helps bring people closer together. It is not a social media, but it really nurtures your emotional health. Another way of saying that is it nurtures your relationships. I began my career as a biomedical engineer, developing medical devices. I've earned more than 75 patents and like a dozen publications, bringing these things to the global market. But for 22 years now, I've been digging into and exploring why people do what they do. Why do people behave the way they behave? And how can we improve our behaviors? And that's what led to creating the Uchi app. Uchi is spelled UCHI, if you're curious.
They're funny. Cool. Okay, and for some who do not know, my name is Tabitha Barron, and I am the founder of Keeping Your Kids Safe. Because of an incident for our family, my niece being placed on a wrong school bus twice in the same school year, I decided to design and develop a platform that allows each child to effectively communicate their way home. You as parents will get text messages during the process. And we actually cover 100% of an elementary school campus. So we help to support your children making it to the destination of your choice without incident. Okay, so I'll go ahead and put the banner up now so that people know that we are accepting comments and questions, right, for sure. But we want to also say, this is our contradiction for today. So this is going to hit a little heavy. It's important to note that if you are not in a safe place, or you're not with somebody who you need to make sure that you're okay. Some of what we say today actually may be triggering. So there's an opportunity for you to be able to know that there is help out there for you. But sometimes we need to go ahead and conquer these contradictions because it's costing us a lot of people and a lot of children unnecessarily. So I would just start there. So it's not, did I have on here? It's not a mental health problem. Okay. Now, the history of this is that I was having a conversation with Kevin yesterday, and he was very, very frustrated with a situation that he had encountered with his alma mater, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the fact of the matter is, I was like, well, it's time for us to have the conversation, because nothing gets solved as long as, oh my gosh, my internet's going to do this thing. Nothing gets solved unless we have a conversation about it, period. It's just that simple. So go ahead and share your experience, Kevin, so that we understand why we're here to do that.
Wow. So am I just going to say this straight up, right? So I'm just going to say it straight up. This could bite me in the backside or not. We'll see. But like you said, if we don't talk about this stuff, nothing's going to change. Nothing's going to get solved. So I went to North Carolina State University. I love my university. I have such crazy nostalgia for my entire time at NC State. I loved it there. But unfortunately, I've been hearing more and more about a lot of problems happening. And it's not isolated to NC State. They don't know I'm doing this. They have no clue about any of this stuff. But it's not isolated to NC State. It's not isolated to universities. And it's not even isolated just to K through 12 schools. But last year, NC State, there were 14 deaths of students, 7 of which were suicides. And this year, it's like a week into school, they've already had their first student death in this school year. We don't know the cause yet. I haven't heard anything about that, but one student has died. But even just last week, I think it was, at University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, which is our direct rival, but we love each other anyway, really. But last week, a student shot and killed a professor at that school. So this is a major problem. You know, suicide, murder, and other extreme behavior, not to mention the depression and anxiety that is, you know, affecting such a much larger population, not just school age, but, you know, globally. We are not even get close to solving these problems. And earlier today, I posted on LinkedIn a graphic that I've had on my computer from 2016 that I got from the CDC's website, cdc.gov, that talks about it's a whole table about the leading causes of death for United States citizens. And this is from 2016. And the second leading cause of death for age group 10 to 34, 10 to 34, the second leading cause of death is suicide. That was in 2016. That's long before COVID. Okay. COVID did not just suddenly cause all the problems. These problems, suicide, depression, anxiety, and addiction, and alcohol abuse, and eating disorders, and bullying, and gun violence, these have all been problems for decades, for centuries, I'll even say for millennia, and we are not getting any closer to improving the situation. In fact, everything is worse. Okay, I'm a bit of a generalizer, so just take that with a grain of salt. But all of these behaviors are worse than they've ever been. And this is even after we've come back. Well, where's the quote? Come back from COVID. Okay, so the problems are worse than ever. So if the mental health industry had any kind of clue about how to solve these, we'd be making progress, and we're not. So that's why this is the contradiction. This is the path that I've been following now for 22 years. And I've talked to enough psychologists and psychology professors and medical doctors and so on to know that I'm not off base here. The mental health industry does not know what they're doing, and they don't know how to solve the problem. And it's because it's not a mental health problem. It's an emotional health problem, and there's a difference. And until we really distinguish and define correctly, because I don't care, the CDC, the FDA, the AMA, the WHO, they're not defining it correctly. And if you don't have a clear understanding of what your problem is, you are not going to solve that problem. I have 80 patents to show if you don't know what the real problem is, you're not going to find a solution. Because when you do identify a true problem, the true problem, then creating solutions is actually incredibly simple. It doesn't mean it doesn't take effort to put it into effect, but it means that it's not that difficult. And I'm sorry, human beings, mammals, are not that complicated. So I don't want to hear that it's complicated, it's messy, it's multifactorial. No, it's not. All of that is wrong. And until we get that, until we accept that, acknowledge that, and follow through with that, we're going to continue to lose our kids, our spouses, our loved ones. People are going to continue to suffer, which then drives even more destructive behavior, or extremely constructive, but we'll go there another time.
Yeah. So it's not a mental health thing. And I have to say, this is hard because today I've had a really challenging day. And I think for the last month, I've been just in a place where it's just not okay. And my personal stuff is that I've suffered from depression for many years. I mean, just put it out there, because at the end of the day, as long as I don't say it out loud, then I can still pretend like it doesn't exist, right? But the other thing is that, I have attempted, and that's a problem, right? And so I know that's an issue. That's something that has happened. And I struggle with that all the time. And then some of the things that I notice is that the worst things to say to someone in a depressive state episode is, but you have so much to be happy about. Oh, okay. Don't do that. That's hard. Okay.
Yeah,
We can't
no,
have that, right?
no.
We
But
have we all have bad days, right?
Mhm.
That's true. But there's some things that are associated with that. And I think that a lot of the reason why I wanted to bring this to point is that the pandemic actually there were a lot of deaths associated to being lonely, and realizing that your circle, the people you thought were around you and your friends, were no longer there, right?
okay,
And
Yeah.
you had that.
but feeling lonely is not a mental illness.
It's
It's a
not.
feeling.
Yes.
A
And that's
feeling is not a mental issue.
right. But what I'm saying is that I get that. And so I thank you, Mike and Jody, and all the hounds that are coming
Yeah.
on, because I think this is an important question. These are important conversations to have, because at the end of the day, Christine is dealing with the little ones, right? And I'm dealing with the ones that are little, and then going into school, and then you have Lisa. I love seeing Christine and Shot Tabitha. Oh my gosh, I'm always getting in trouble. So my thing is that so depression is some
Real.
of it is situational, right? Some of it has to do with certain circumstances.
Hmm.
But here's the thing: kids are killing themselves, right?
Hmm.
Kids are dealing with this depression, and you know what we do? What we do is we say it's a mental health thing. It's not, because if people weren't mean and people weren't nasty and people weren't doing some of the things that they were doing to others to make them feel devalued and not important or not relevant or whatever phrases we're going to use, those people, we wouldn't find ourselves in a position that the only thing to do is make it a permanent solution to a temporary situation, right? There have been times in which I've thought about it and I've said, man, if I could just let me just go to sleep and not wake up again, right?
Hmm.
And it's not that my problem was so bad that that it wouldn't have been solved tomorrow. It was that I couldn't see where tomorrow was going to be any better
Right.
than today. Because if
Hmm.
I'm dealing with this today and I don't get to and I'm just going to struggle my whole entire way
Well,
through
the
it, I
pain
don't
is
want to
just
do that,
continuing to tomorrow. Whatever
right?
pain you're having right now, or in this today, for your example, right? Today,
My example.
that pain could still be there tomorrow. And
Hmm.
so before I go into this pain thing, I just want to say that all of these feelings are real. All of these behaviors are real. Depression, anxiety, suicide, gun violence, all of these things are real. I'm not saying any of this stuff isn't real, and people's feelings are there. You feel whatever you need to feel. That's really one of the most important things here. Feel whatever you need to feel. But when we aren't allowed to feel that, when we're shamed, judged, degraded, or emotionally neglected for having a feeling, it hurts. It causes
Right.
pain. And that pain is real. And that pain is not mental. In fact, in 22 years, I've never been able to identify any kind of mental pain that even exists. There is no such thing as mental pain. There's only two kinds of pain that the human brain can recognize: physical pain and emotional pain. And your brain doesn't know the difference between the two. You can look at functional MRI studies. Your brain will activate the same way, whether you're experiencing physical pain or emotional pain. But all your brain really knows is you're in pain, do something about it right now. And a
Yeah.
person in pain will do anything to try and ease their pain. And in the absence of knowing how to, of jumping ahead, but in the absence of knowing how to really love and connect and feel a sense of belonging, that's when we turn to behaviors to try and ease or compensate for that pain. And when we don't see a way to continue to compensate for that pain, the ultimate way to deal with it is suicide.
Yeah. Because you just want to
I'll,
make it
I'll
stop.
just end it
Now
all
for
now.
right.
I
So
like to
and that's what happens. It ends
into
all right there. But
And then my pain is gone.
right.
right. I
And
want to jump in too.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Come on.
as some of you know, my husband's very sick. So, I've been going through depression myself. It's situational depression. It's not where I want to end my life, but sometimes you're like, you get into that feeling, like Tabitha was saying, you get into that depressed mood. And sometimes you can't see a way like past it, even though you cognitively know. So it's constantly reframing. You have to reframe your mindset. So it's constantly, do I want to be in this state? Is this healthy for me? No, it's not. So it's reframing. I teach the very little students. So it used to be where I would have like behavior charts up. So we talk about, now it's more social emotional learning, which is what you're talking about, which feelings are okay to have.
Sort of talking about, not exactly, but sort of.
Correct. So we're talking about emotions. Emotions are okay to have. And how do we have to be able to talk about them. And the children need to be able to express them in appropriate ways and I teach them how to have mindfulness.
Right. I don't want to cut you off.
Yes.
But,
Keep going.
but what I'm talking about, though, is so there's emotional intelligence, which is recognizing your emotions and being able to manage your emotions in some way. What I'm talking about is emotional health, and that's different. Emotional health, for me, the definition that I've landed on is a person's ability to give and receive love. And by love, I mean love, connection, a sense of belonging. There's a whole genesis of how this came to be. I won't go into it now, but it's our ability to give and receive love. Okay. And a minute ago, you said you can try to reframe and cognitively change. Okay. But here's the problem with that. And if that works, great. I am 100% on board with anything that works for anyone. If you find something, anybody finds something that works for them, great. Keep doing it. Doesn't matter what I say. If you got something that works, do it. Okay. But my definition for mental health is a person's ability to focus, concentrate, think clearly, perform cognitive tasks. It's what you said a minute ago about our cognitive ability, okay? But we know from the neuroscience that 95% of our behaviors are driven by our subconscious. Our cognitive ability is in our frontal lobe. That's in our consciousness. That's 5% of our actions and behaviors come from our conscious mind. We like to think we're in control of everything. And this is the giant false premise that the mental health industry is based on, and why the mental health industry does not work, because it's based on a false premise that a person is in 100% control of every action and behavior. And if they're not, their brain must be broken. And that is incorrect, because only 5% of our actions and behaviors are in our conscious control. But if we think,
so we get your passion. We have that. The one thing though, and I need Christine to finish, is that until people become aware, they cannot make a change. So in order for people to make a decision to do something different, they first have to become aware that what they're currently doing is not working or the proper path for them to take. So
yes,
Christine,
no.
And
I'll shut
so
up.
that's why we're doing this, right? Because
it's a contradiction. I mean, we can have, even have contradictions within ourselves too.
Right.
So I don't know. I'm just going to throw this out here, Tabitha. So we kind of dealt with some of the similar things. Do you find that that's helpful for you to kind of reframe and to think about this? Is this where I want to be headed? Is this helpful or hurtful to myself? And that's kind of how I start to work through some of that.
For me, I think that, so I look at it in a couple ways. One is that I remember somebody telling me, if you can't figure out how to live for yourself, live for me until you can figure it out, right? And so that kind of helps. Reframing only works when you're in a bubble. That's the thing, is in the bubble, it works. So I can say, and I can soothe myself, and I can help myself and all that stuff in my bubble. Right. But as soon as because let's face it, you got little kids, little children, little people run around here sometimes, and they just want to pop a bubble every single time, right? They just pop a bubble in a heartbeat. They don't care. They don't know the impact of what that bubble is. So they're like, and you're sitting there saying to yourself, I'm not a jerk. I'm not a jerk. I'm not a jerk, right? And then your little person comes by and says, yes, you are. Pop. right? And so, of course, then that
And
reframing,
that triggers.
Yeah.
yes, it just starts the cycle all over again.
Mhm.
So sometimes, so the cognitive behavioral triangle has been this consistent thing that they have readily given us, right? But it doesn't mean that it's the best thing, right? It
And
doesn't
that's
work for
after the
all
fact.
things.
It's
Yes,
after
it
the
doesn't
fact.
work for all things, and it doesn't change. It's so this is where the critical and independent thinking comes into play that we talked about. When we talked about this before, that without critical and independent thinking, children do not know how to manage their feelings and have their coping mechanisms in order to get where they're going, right? But
I
No,
would
at the
agree.
same
no, we're missing it. We're completely missing it.
he's like, absolutely not.
I've seen this. I've seen this for 22 years.
Okay, so
We're
you're
missing
saying
it.
that they need, so are you saying, you're ultimately saying that we, that, okay, so tell me what you mean,
They
Kevin,
don't
because you have to
have
be very concise, because
these
don't go off
little,
on this
okay,
tangent.
these little children, and which grow into adults, they don't have a basic foundation of emotional health in the first place. So all that other stuff that you're talking about is like trying to build a house in quicksand. It doesn't work. They
So
don't
Kevin,
have an emotional health foundation.
so are you talking about the
Oh,
love, being able to receive and give love? Is that what you're
yes,
talking about? Just that
yes,
basic. So
yes.
when do you think that that occurs then?
Yes.
It occurs, well, it begins in the womb, but let's just say it occurs day one of birth. You are born and it starts.
All right. So then are you saying that they lose it somehow,
No,
or
they never
that
learned
they
it in the
continue
first
to have it?
place. And this
So
is
how do they
another,
learn it?
pardon?
How do they learn it?
Well, it should be from their parents, but parents don't know how to do it. Most parents have no clue, and their parents have no clue, so they didn't teach it, and it just goes on through 6,000 generations for 200,000 years of Homo sapiens. We've never been in a position until about 75 years ago, but I'll be conservative and say 150 years ago, the late 1800s. Our main priority as a species has been survival. For 200,000 years, all we care about is survival. That's all that matters. I just want to live, okay? So we just needed food and shelter, air, water, sleep, okay? Those are the basic physical needs. And it was only even as recent as 150 years ago, the late 1800s, humans could not reliably source food. We could not reliably preserve food. We didn't even know if we were going to make it through the winter with enough firewood or coal or something to burn for heat. Okay? So I don't care about your emotions. I don't care if you're happy or sad. We need food. We haven't had food in a week. That's what life was. You watch Little House on the Prairie. I mean, that's like late
That's
1800s.
survival.
It's survival, okay? But now in the 20th century, and really since World War II, basic survival is no longer a day-to-day struggle for most of the world. Okay, let's say first world countries, or for 20% of the population anyway, but that's driving most of what's happening in the world. Because even today, 80% of the world's population does not have enough food and clean water in a given day. But let's just put that aside for right now, because it's the 20% of the world's population that does, that's destroying the world. We're destroying each other, ourselves, and the world. So it goes back to the basic needs. But the point of all that is that we've never known how to nurture each other emotionally because it's never been our priority.
So do you think it can be taught? So in
Of
my
course.
classroom, I put that actually as a priority. So we learn how to take care of one another and to help one another as a community. So there's children that actually will take care of one another. If they see a child is in distress,
Mhm.
they will actually, and it could be a student that already has
Yeah.
a lot of distress. They will take that other student and they will take them and guide them and do
It's a
some deep
natural
breathing with
instinct.
them. So I see a lot of compassion. If we could have
Mhm.
that kind of compassion and teach our children at a young age this kind of compassion, we could
Yeah,
save a lot of lives. So
absolutely.
starting when
Absolutely.
they're very young.
Mm-hmm. It has to. It has to. But we're not doing it. What we're
Right.
doing on day one of life, what we begin to do, and again, I'm generalizing, right? But what we begin to do is a baby's crying. What do? We say, shh, shh, you're okay. You're okay. But they're not okay. They're crying. They just came into a whole new world out of this nice, warm, cozy space where they're getting all the nutrients that they need from mom. But now they're in this whole different environment. It's cold, it's sterile. Where's my mom? Where's my survival? I don't know. And we're shushing them and we're telling them they're fine and they're not. That's emotional neglect from day one. It's emotional neglect, and we're minimizing their feelings.
Okay, so all right, I get that.
That's trauma.
And
that
is, and it starts very early. However, we get to choose. So me as a mom, I chose differently. So when mine's cried and first of all, they came out. First of all, babies are yucky when they come out. I don't care what nobody say, they're just yucky when they come out. So I am really not trying to shush anything that looks like yuck, when it comes out. This is what I'm saying. But the thing about it is that when mine would cry, I would be like, my response, and I just had this conversation with someone else, and I was like, it's funny because for the most part, my experience has been when I fall in front of my dad or my grandfather, they're like, just brush it off. It's all right. Just let's go. Right. But for the mom, my mom was like, come here, let me look at you. Anything broken? What do we need to do? Do we need to go and do things? What do we have to do?
How do you need to fix it?
That's
how do we need to solve it?
Right? That's love.
Yes.
Right. And so now it's an evaluation. And so then she says, then it's, I remember my mom would say, okay, so there's a difference from crying to whining. So you got to pick one.
Fine.
And whining is not an option here. So now you only have one choice. Right. You either cry or you stop.
Yeah. So the message that you got from your mom was, you matter, you have value, I love you. Because in our brain, value equals love. And that's the message that you got from mom because she tended to you. You felt cared for. You felt like you mattered. But from, was it dad or somebody else?
Dad and grandpa.
Dad and grandpa, the message you got from them is, you don't matter. You don't have value. You better just suck it up.
Yeah.
And the message you're getting is, you're not loved. It's just like when a baby's crying in the crib. And I think this came out of like Dr. Spock, or it was from the orphanages and everything from, back in the 1930s, I think, or 40s, where let your kid cry itself to sleep. Put them in their room. And by 6 months, they need to cry themselves to sleep. That's trauma. We are teaching our kids that you don't matter. You don't have value. And then they learn to suppress their emotion. They suppress the crying because they've learned that if I don't cry, then I get attention, which equals love. But if I do cry, I don't get the attention and I need it to survive. So it's a learned behavior.
Yes.
My kids were colicky. My one child was colicky, so cried all the time. So you're trying to figure out what can you do to alleviate that. So we ended up getting really creative. We ended up giving a bath because during the bath time there wasn't any kind of thing like that. Plus there was a lot of gas, so we let her kick and stuff like that to get the gas out. So it ended up being something wrong, with her, the way her tummy was processed. So I had a, rubber tummy.
Right.
The more that she would cry, the more gas that she would get. So I had to figure out a way to expel that gas. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because of just talking about making sure that you're meeting your children's needs. I couldn't get her to sleep. So what do? I brought her in and we had a rocking chair and she was right next to my side of the bed. And so then that way I could attend to her pretty quickly and see if she was under distress. Because if I put her back in her bed, she was crying, she wasn't sleeping, and it was not helpful. Another thing I was thinking about too that we probably should talk about is that sometimes people's physical, if they have physical needs, like let's say I've known people that have had onset of seizures that can cause like suicidal types of ideology. Somebody else had anemia that I knew, and that also caused
Absolutely.
psychological ideology about hurting themselves.
Absolutely.
So even psychosis, because if they get close to that death experience, they can hear voices that are, in the next life and telling them, you don't belong in this hospital, you belong in another one. Well, then you're like, is that like a mental thing? So those are some things to also look at too.
Yes, those are all true. Those are all valid, but they're not nearly, I
Very
just make a
prevalent.
statement. They're not nearly as common and prevalent
Sure.
as what we think and what we try to rely on. Like trying to say, oh, it's a genetic problem. If you even look at the data on cancer, only 10% of cancers are genetically contrived. God, my words are just terrible here. Only cancer is only 10% a genetic issue, but we always say, oh, it's genetic. Oh, it's genetic. And here's the other problem with the physical side of things is we continue to try and identify a physical cause to an emotional issue. Further, we continue to try and create a physical solution for an emotional problem. It doesn't work. I can tell you, I'm a 22-year. Sorry?
What's the answer? Because I
To
get it.
nurture the emotional health component, to acknowledge and validate a person and their emotions and their feelings and their thoughts and their ideas and their perspectives, to engage people and not shame, not judge, not degrade, not emotionally neglect. When I was a boy, I lost my favorite winter hat and I was crying. And my mom is like, "Why are you crying? It's not a big deal." So she's minimizing my feelings. She's like, "It's not a big deal. If you want it, we'll get you a new hat. It's no big deal." And I was really upset. I don't know why I was so upset, but I was upset. And she's like, "I don't want to hear it. If you want to cry, just go up in your room and cry because I don't want to hear it." So that's what I did. I went up in my room by myself and I cried. My mom did not provide me with any emotional support or comfort or nurturing. So then I didn't feel like I mattered. I didn't feel like I had any value, and value equals love. And whenever we devalue a person,
Mm-mm.
what?
I don't necessarily agree with that. Right. I don't agree with that sentence as a whole.
Which one?
Value. I don't necessarily know. I'm not convinced that value automatically equals love. I do believe that there's some other things that play a part in that. And honestly, I think everybody, and I think I've had this conversation before, everybody's need to be seen and heard and acknowledged,
Value.
right?
Mhm.
Right. And that translates to value.
Mhm.
So, okay, well,
If
maybe
you don't feel heard, then you don't feel valued. If you don't feel
Okay.
seen, you don't feel valued. You don't matter.
Okay.
If you don't feel
All right.
understood, you don't feel valued.
So I have a question for you because I'm just throwing it out there. So like I think sometimes like as a parent, I don't know if you're also a parent, Kevin, but I'm thinking like some of my bad parent days because we all have those. You're tired, you come home from work and you're like, oh gosh, really? Like I just needed to come home and just to relax.
Absolutely.
So I think we've all had those. So and I'm thinking, like as one slip up, does that make a child feel not seen, valued, or heard? I think what a parent needs to do is we all have those moments is to come clean.
Oh,
I had a bad day. I am so sorry. I hear you
yeah.
crying up there. I needed to take a break, but how I handled the situation was not good. That's
Mhm.
how we build those relationships. That's how we
Trust.
have mentally healthy children. We can make mistakes.
Emotionally healthy, but yeah.
but we don't.
But
You
I agree with
understand
you
that.
100%,
Listen,
Christine.
at the same time, though, we're having this conversation, and one of the things is I'm very, very clear in these lives is that we will bring the challenge to the table, but we have got to walk away with we have to walk away with actionable items that people can walk away with.
Oh, absolutely.
Because
That's fine.
we started with the suicide thing. That's why we have that thing at the bottom. We know that it's happening in schools. I remember a little boy hanging himself. I've had it in my family myself. And I remember that he hung himself, and it was around bullying. We just had a conversation about bullying and how it impacts different people. These kids are struggling. And one of the things that bothered me the most during a pandemic was that everybody was talking about the adults and how we were struggling and how it was hard for us to be in this pandemic, and everything that was happening in our worlds was just coming to an end, and all blah, 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 okay? But no one really talked about the mental health and the ability and the coping mechanisms or the coping skills that the children needed, because their lives came to a screeching halt too.
Again,
And
children are suffering.
absolutely, and
like it.
yeah, and the children are just picking up on all the stuff that the parents are dealing with, you know. And
the other thing is, some of them have never been out of their home. I had children coming in.
But just because you haven't been out of your home doesn't mean you don't know how to talk to people. You talk with your parents.
Okay, so I would disagree with you on that, because if you come in you have a nucleus that's maybe just a few people, all of a sudden you're thrown into hundreds of people potentially, and you have to switch classes, and you don't know what you're doing. I'm talking about the real little ones that had never, with like threes that were when COVID shut us down. They had never been anywhere. We were strangers. I had children that were like fight or flight constantly. So they were popping. They wanted to run out the doors. They were scared. I honestly don't blame them. I try to put myself in their shoes. They didn't feel emotionally secure, and they did not feel safe in that environment because it was all new. They've never been to a store, and then we throw them into a school situation.
That's why they talk about those COVID babies, right? The ones that were born during the time.
Right. But even while these young children are just, getting going, and they haven't been in a store and they haven't been to school or anything, I would argue to say that the parents don't know how to interact with their children. Just like you said a minute ago, Christine, and I agree with you 100%, that when parents don't come clean, when they're not honest with their kids, what the environment that they're setting up is that they're perfect, and anything that the kids do is wrong and bad, and they're not good enough, they're not worthy of love, they're not loved. That's the message that the kids get when parents aren't honest. Obviously, we need to talk to our kids, age specific and, age appropriate and so on. But just like those young babies with the shushing, and you're right. Who was it in the chat? It was Mike about, shut up, baby. Of course, yes, there's a difference here and everything. But we know that parents, that babysitters, that teachers, they yell at the kids, they yell at the students, shut up, you're not good enough, you're never going to amount to anything. This stuff happens on a day-to-day basis. And I'm going to give you the actionable items, or some anyway, not the exhaustive list.
The one thing I want to say is this, because it's right in line with what you're talking about. So Mike says that he's going to close up work and go hang out with his kids and not be as grumpy, right? Because intention helps. At the end of the day, we are an example for our children as to what to do. We may have started with not having all of the right skill set in order to understand how not to re-injure the little ones, right? And we may not have all of the skills necessary in order to, we know we want to be better, and we know we want to do better, but we don't know how to do it. And Mike says that he was having a bad day and a bad year, but he had to turn around and look at what he was doing and how he can improve his self in a way that was going to help his children. Because because believe it or not, my opinion is that what we do for the first 15 years of their lives, right, will be mirrored in them in the next rest of our lives. Yes. Because we got 5 years before the child's behavior and his personality is truly set. And then we got another 10 years to impress upon them and give them the skills necessary in order for them to live the rest of their lives. For, and then this is the foundation of it.
Absolutely.
So if you walk in the door and you kick the dog and punch your wife and spit and just sit there and drink beer for the rest of the night, guess what your children are going to do? They're going to expect that in their lives.
That's the behavior that they learn. That's the behavior they learn, that this is how I deal with my job that I hate or my life that I hate or whatever. This is the behavior. It's learned behavior. It's not some genetic disorder that Whitney Houston's daughter died by suicide in her bathtub or drank herself to death or drugs to death in the bathtub. Dying in the bathtub is not genetic, So you learn these behaviors. If your parents did drugs, then you're probably going to turn to drugs. If it was alcohol, you're turn to alcohol. If it was, physical abuse, you turn to physical. You might find a behavior somewhere else, but whatever you're most exposed to is probably what you're going to lean on.
Okay, so today, what I'm going to say is that because we did make sure that we had enough time to make sure that we're hitting these major points. Christine deals with the young ones. And so I would like to understand from your standpoint, what do you do to help support your children who are having challenging times? Because you're going to see them when, you're going to see those ones who are having problems with food in their refrigerator, or their parents are not happy people, or they're not present. Right. So what can you do, or what do you suggest for parents to do and other educators to do to help support those children when they're feeling like, oh man, tomorrow is just not worth it, or, and just not lean so heavily on it's a mental health thing?
So that was a really loaded question. So I'm going to take the question, because I'm like, oh my God, that's like an hour-long talk. So I'll try to condense that hour-long talk and give like a little snippet of what I think. So from a teacher standpoint, is making sure that children know that you are accessible. So I take a look to check to see how accessible I am, to see how children come up and respond to me. Do they come up right away? Do they greet me? Are they excited to see me? So if I see those kinds of connections, and I also know that when I talk to them, that they will also feel secure. So if we don't have those kinds of connections, if you we want to make sure that we foster those connections. And it can also go for parents too, that we need to make sure that we're providing that emotional stability for our children. And it's hard because I work in a Title I school. So the Title I schools, the parents are struggling. They're working like the third shift. They might not see their children, that much. There's food scarcity. It's very challenging. Some of our children only get food during the school days, and so our schools really don't close down because of that need. So making sure that if that is the case for the families, because we know that they need to have the food and shelter. We talked about that. Kevin mentioned that those needs are taken care of, and that they tap into resources that are available in the community to help meet their basic needs. So then that way they can take care of their children and meet their emotional needs.
I know that there's programs out there that can actually help those families. So in the event here's my plug for Skyward RX. So if you and your family are in need of any kind of support, nutrition, and things like that, no cost to you, please reach out to us, because we do have a place where we can actually send you to get you the support and help for those families who may be struggling a little bit. And then, so Kevin, what is it? So give me 3 points that people can take away from here to have actionable items for them to be able to support and make a change a trajectory as to how we see emotional health in this country and how we're going to be able to support our children.
So I start with, when we're engaging each other, whoever it is, to really listen and acknowledge and validate whatever it is they're sharing. And if you can validate the emotion behind whatever it is, then that's even more powerful, because then they feel heard and understood. And that really nurtures the emotional health at the core. The other side of it is, whenever we're engaging anyone, and this goes for school big time, but of course parents, and then in the workplace, is when we're engaging with each other, to not shame, judge, degrade, or emotionally neglect that person. There's other elements of little t trauma, but those are the big four that I've landed on. And I'm sorry, but the way school is currently set up, it's a total judgment fest. Just grades alone is a judgment. And if you don't get a good grade, you're bad. You're not worthy of love. It hurts. And that's all that pressure is what's building up on the kids through school. I mean, they're creating the problem in and of itself. So those are the key areas. And I love what Christine was saying about sharing as parents and teachers and bosses, to share your own trials and tribulations. You're not perfect. We're all in this together, and that's going to help us connect. And connection nurtures emotional health, and emotional health drives behavior.
So I'll go ahead and touch on one of the things you said about school. The pass or fail situation is a problem. I don't care where we are. Pass or fail is not real. Life is not a pass or a fail.
Totally.
Okay. And that actually causes a lot more anxiety than it should. If grades are meant to show what we learn, or what we have, or what we have learned, if it's a way to measure, then okay. Right. But at the end of the day, that pass or fail has cost us so much more and so many people. And I just think that it might be another way to kind of review it. And it's a sorting process that only gets used in manufacturing, right?
It's a value judgment, right? Back to value.
So we're trying to create, and I agree, and I'm going to jump in because I probably am not like a traditional teacher viewpoint. So I think that when I look at my class, I always take a look to see where the next step is. So right now I teach younger children, so I don't have to be locked into grades. So we have those conversations about, what is your next step? This is where you need to be next. Yeah. So I could take them, past where they are at their grade level.
You don't need the grade.
I can meet them right where they are. And I think that's where we need to go, because ultimately we're trying to create lifelong learners and children that want to learn more and that want to know, hey, where am I right now? Where's my next step? Where do I need to go?
Where do I want to go?
Yeah, where do I want to go?
Right.
Like, every student's status. You don't need any grade at all. I'm sure you can give me a complete rundown on every single one of your students. And there's probably more than 5 or 10 students, right? You can give me a rundown. Right. So you can give a whole rundown. You don't need a grade.
Right.
But the one thing is that I want to see is that, are you having fun? What was the best part of it? Because so I myself focus so much on the gap where I am versus how far I've come. And for those reasons, it actually impacts me in a way that's not very positive all the time. Right. So it will be great to actually say for these children, okay, where do you want to do next? But what did you learn from it in the back? Right. What did you learn from it here? And so then that can kind of help to support them in that way, so that they know that they get to learn, they get to turn around and look behind and see how far they've come. And then what was fun about it? What did they learn? Because this is where they learn what they like and things like that, by being able to do that. They
want to learn. Right. I mean, humans naturally are curious. We want to learn. We want to explore. We want to understand. But we're being shut down in formal education. Again, I'm generalizing, of course, right? But we're shutting down because of all of what, I won't go into all that stuff, but great starters.
Yes.
And we're shutting it down But look,
Yes.
I didn't learn about how to be a successful triathlete, an Ironman triathlete. I didn't go to a single class on that. All of this that I've learned, that's been validated, that I've published research on, I didn't go to any class or have any formal education around everything that I've been talking about today. But I'm curious and I want to understand and I want to make my life better. I want to make people around me, I want to help make their lives better. And this is where I've landed, is when we connect, that's how we've survived for 200,000 years, by working together, not dividing it all apart.
See,
Where
I was gonna exactly, because I was gonna go back to community. So a community of support is extremely important. We did touch upon that. So that's one way we can help protect our mental health and mental health of other people, or emotional stability, by making sure that we are, connecting with others, and that they feel seen, heard, and valued
it's
by
a
other
basic
people
human need.
in the community.
It's a basic human
We're
need.
alone.
Yeah.
Yes, Kevin.
Yes.
But you are teaching us something that we all need to learn, and that is that we have to actively be listening. The one thing about it is that we have to actively participate in listening, and it's more than just hearing something and then stopping and saying, no, I don't like that, so I'm going to inject. You have to hear the statement out. And that's for all of us, because there are times in which my kids come up and blah, 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 and I'm like, I'm not trying to hear that, right? And I interrupt. But what I find is that if I'd have let them finish the second part of whatever that statement was, they actually had the answer to their question, or they actually had the answer to the problem. But because I shut them off, I have now injected another challenge for them to have to overcome. So we have to figure out how to communicate effectively in a way where both parties, or all parties involved, feel heard. And the only reason why I say that is because I hear your passion. I see it. I'm like, we're here with you and for you. We started the conversation on a very heavy note, and that's why I still have the ticker at the bottom. But the reason why, but I'm looking at the situation, and you say that this is emotional health. We have to do these things, but at the same time, value in a person's voice and being seen and heard has to exist in all places. And you have to be willing to hear something that you may not like or agree with, but you have to be able to hear it completely out in order to devise the correct response, so that that person then says, he heard me, she heard me, and wait, somebody's listening to me. Because I had a conversation with someone earlier today, and I was just like, I said, I'm so thankful that you're here, because you agreed to speak to me, somebody who you don't know, and somebody you don't know, and man, you're so much further away. And she's like, that's not how this works, right? But the point is that I seen her in a different light, but she heard me when I said, and then she was able to say, no, you're valuable as well. Just because you may not be standing side by side with me doesn't mean that you're not of value. So I just want to make sure that we're really clear about this. I took classes for and I'm not going to plug that group, but I took classes to help with communication and things. And one of the things is I learned how to actively listen. I learned that there were things that sometimes I would jump in unnecessarily. I equate conversations much like double dutch, right? We're always sitting there waiting to try to get in those ropes, right? But the thing about it was that some people will always step on you, constantly I need to be the one you hear. I need to be the one that's most important. Yes. So what I had to learn was I had to listen completely all the way through, and then be able to say, okay, based on what you just explained, A, B, and C, this is what I understand the challenge to be. Is that fair to say? Yes or no? They're going to respond yes or no. Based on that yes or no, I can then proceed with what I have formed in my mind. Because I think in some cases, people think that silence is a problem. Silence is not a problem. Silence is somebody processing what was just said so that they can spit it out on the other side. But if people start jumping in before their time, if you jump the ropes and double dutch before time, you are not hitting those ropes. Those ropes are hitting you. So you have got to be willing to listen or hear a child out. You have to be willing to listen. When somebody's crying or somebody's having a hard time, the first question you ask is, where does it hurt? And then can you walk or can you move it? You have to ask clarifying questions in order to get to the next step. And then when you do that, then you can assess, okay, I hear you and I understand it's in pain. So I understand the tears, but I'm going to tell you, you're okay because we can fix this. But when you can't fix it, then okay, we got a problem. Houston, we have a problem. We need to go and look at how we're going to do something different. So for me, the points that I would like to make sure that we end on here is that Christine is done with the little ones. So the thing is, give them a safe space to go. Give them a place or a person in which they can say, hey, I'm having a really challenging day today, and I just don't know what to do with my feelings. Okay. I don't know what to do with my feelings. I don't know how I'm supposed to feel. And guess what? It's not a mental health thing. It's just a challenging day. Right. And then on your side, you've provided a platform that allows people to get closer and to be able to have a conversation in a way that's safe for them. Right. Right.
Well, and I'll say I'm a much better listener in writing asynchronously than I am. I mean, I'm always working on it, but in the verbal dialogue and in the moment, it's hard, for a
Yes.
lot of people, it's hard. And if you don't have real practice and all the stuff that you were saying, and that's yet another reason why I created this platform, the Uchi app, because it's asynchronous, only written conversation. There's no pictures, there's no video, no audio. And I grew up in a home where I never had a chance to speak. It was always my parents. And I apologize if I've spoken over either of you today, but that's how I learned. The only way I was going to be heard is if I tried to dominate, I call it bulldoze, a conversation. And I know I'm not the only one that does this. And I know just through the Uchi app, through written conversation, I'm such a better listener. And so are my parents, by the way.
Right. So, and that's true. So I'm glad that you have a solution for people, for families and schools and stuff that will be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
My recommendation as we go ahead and close out is that at the end of the day, it is up to us to make the decision to change the behaviors that are harmful to our children. We're talking about mental health, we're talking about emotional health, and we're talking about coping skills in order to get to the next day. If you want to know more about any of these programs, please feel free to reach out to these people and on the panel. But at the same time, your children, I will say this every day, and I've told my children this every day of their life, good, bad, or indifferent, the decisions we make have consequences to them. It doesn't matter what you think is going to happen. What you do today will impact your tomorrow. And if you are not willing to pay that price, I strongly, strongly recommend that you do something different. So I thank you very much for everybody being here today. I think it's been an amazing conversation. And we're going to have to follow this up with another one. But I do thank you, Kevin, for bringing this to our attention. I feel like hopefully your alma mater will be able to reach out to you and be able to see how Uchi will be able to help resolve that problem, because 14 children in one school shouldn't happen, and no child should ever feel like the only option is to die. So everybody have a great evening. Thank you for your time today. We appreciate the support and look forward to you visiting us again next week, same time, same place. Until then, words are power. Please remember to use them wisely. If you have an interest in discussing a contradiction or would like to be on our live show, please let us know and send us a direct message.